everyone. Welcome back. Ready to dive in. Today, we're tackling know-how.
Know-how, yeah. And I mean, not just like knowing how to, I don't know, change a tire or something.
Right. Not the everyday stuff. We're talking about companies, right?
Yeah.
And how they can take the really valuable knowledge their people build up from experience and actually use it.
It's huge, right? Companies put so much into training, development, all that, but then capturing what people learn on the job often falls through the cracks.
Totally. It's that saying, experience is the best teacher, but like, what good is it if that knowledge just vanishes? Someone leaves the company, moves teams, whatever, it's gone.
And that's what we're getting into today. We've got this research, Dushin Lee and Eric Vandenstein, their paper on managing know-how. It's eye-opening.
Yeah, some seriously good stuff in there. First thing that jumped out at me, they're saying companies should mainly focus on best practices, like those solutions that just work every time. Sounds kind of obvious, but there's more to it.
Way more to it. It's all about, I guess you could say, getting the most bang for your buck with the info you're storing. Imagine, right, you're trying to bake a cake.
Okay, I'm with you.
Do you want, like, one recipe, guaranteed delicious cake? Or 100 recipes, each one a different way to mess it up?
I'm going for that guaranteed win every time. Who needs to experiment with disaster when you've got the good stuff?
Exactly. It's about that clear path, knowing the best way to do something. Reliable, repeatable, that's what you want.
So wait, does that mean just ignore when things go wrong? There's got to be value in knowing what doesn't work, right?
Oh, absolutely. Learning from failures is huge, but, and this is key, context is everything.
Context is key. Love that. What kind of context are we talking about?
Okay, so say you've got a problem, right? And there are tons of ways to solve it. Knowing what doesn't work, that's like instant progress. You're ruling stuff out, narrowing it down.
Like when you're doing a puzzle. Sometimes figuring out the wrong pieces gets you closer to the solution faster than just guessing.
Right. Or think about it, a really high-stakes decision. Yeah. And there's this one option, if you go down that road, disaster. Understanding that specific failure, that's crucial, right? Saves you from a catastrophe.
So it's not that failures are useless. It's more about using that info strategically, knowing when it matters most. But speaking of stuff that seems kind of backward, there's this thing they call the competency trap. Apparently, knowing a successful way to do something can actually be bad for a company. How's that work?
It's funny, right? This whole paradox basically comes down to exploration versus exploitation. When everyone knows a good enough solution exists, why bother trying to find something better?
Right, like why rock the boat? I get that.
Or it gets even trickier because of this thing called the agency problem.
Yeah.
So employees, they're often the ones taking the risk to experiment. Time, energy, and potential for things to blow up in their face. But then any big wins, those usually benefit the company more broadly.
So you kind of motivate people, right? Get them to try new things, even with that risk.
It's tough. Can't just throw money at it and hope for the best. Figuring out what new ideas are worth, especially if the payoff is way down the line, that's really hard to measure.
And companies, especially these days, they want results now, right? So you start experimenting, don't see an instant return, project gets canned. Not exactly inspiring for anyone else who is thinking of taking a chance.
It's this balancing act. How do you build a culture where people feel safe trying new things, but also, work still gets done and done well? That's the million-dollar question.
No easy answers there for sure. Okay, so we've talked about the types of knowledge that are worth capturing, but what about which companies actually benefit most from these knowledge management systems? Is it a one-size-fits-all kind of thing? Or are there certain companies that see the biggest impact? My hunch is that size probably plays a role.
You're totally right. Size definitely makes a difference. Big companies, they've got a couple of advantages when it comes to this whole knowledge thing.
Okay, so what is it about being big that gives them a leg up? Spill the beans.
Well, first off, just think about the numbers, right? More employees equals more people tackling the same problems, but in their own way, right? With their own little twists and approaches. So more diversity in how they try things, which means the chances of someone, somewhere in that company, hitting on a truly awesome solution, it skyrockets.
So it's like they're crowdsourcing innovation, but from the inside.
Exactly. And then there's this other bonus. Once they find a solution that really works, big companies, they've got that reach, right? They can take that solution, roll it out across teams, departments, globally even, and suddenly the impact is huge.
Makes sense. And it's funny, the research actually gives examples, right? Like McKinsey, Booz Allen, Siemens, these massive companies, they've poured resources into building these really intense knowledge management systems.
And it's no coincidence, is it? Those are companies known for tackling the really tough stuff, consistently getting results. They get that knowledge. When you use it right, it's a superpower.
Right. It's not just about having the knowledge, it's about what you do with it.
Exactly. Oh, and there's this other factor the research talks about, uncertainty. When you're in uncharted territory, like nobody knows the right answer, or it keeps changing, that's when those past wins become really valuable.
It's like having a map, even if it's a little outdated, when you're in a completely new place.
Right.
Those landmarks, those wins, they give you some direction.
Precisely. But, and this is key, this is where we got to remember that competency trap we talked about before. Big companies, with all their knowledge, they got to be super careful about what they decide is the best way to do something, you know?
Because if they get too stuck on those old wins, even if they worked great in the past, it could stifle new ideas. Like they'd miss out on finding even better ways to do things.
Exactly. It's like this constant tightrope walk. You want to use what you know to be efficient, but you also got to encourage people to keep exploring, to keep innovating.
Finding that balance is key, it sounds like. So we've covered the types of knowledge worth saving, the companies that benefit the most. But what about access? Should everyone in a company have access to all the knowledge? This research got me thinking maybe too much transparency isn't always the answer.
It's a good question, right? We tend to think more transparency, always better. But then there's this idea of local versus global knowledge sharing. And it makes you wonder.
Okay, I'm hooked. Give me the lowdown on this local versus global thing.
So basically it's saying that sometimes strategically holding back on sharing all the knowledge across an entire company can actually be a good thing. Instead of everything being open to everyone, you've got these pockets of like local knowledge within teams or departments.
So instead of just giving it all away, you're kind of picking and choosing what to share, where to share it. But why hold back at all? What's the advantage?
It all goes back to that exploration versus exploitation thing we were talking about. If some teams aren't told the best way to do something, they're going to keep searching, right? Trying to figure out their own solutions. That keeps the innovation going.
While other teams, the ones who do know those best practices, they can focus on getting things done using those proven methods. So different parts of the company are moving at different speeds, some exploring, some executing.
Exactly. It's about creating that balance. And this approach, it works really well when you've already got a good solution. But there's probably a better one out there. You're using what you know while still pushing the limits.
Makes sense. But here's another wrench in the gears. What about when solutions get outdated? The business world changes so fast, something that was amazing yesterday is old news tomorrow. How do you manage knowledge when things are constantly in flux?
Well, that's where having options comes in handy, right?
Right.
Like, think about it like a toolbox. You wouldn't want just one tool in there, would you?
Definitely not. Got to have the right tool for the job.
Exactly. So with knowledge, same idea. Instead of just knowing the best way, you've got a few different solutions ready to go because things change, or maybe that old best way, it just doesn't cut it anymore.
So you're prepared, right, no matter what gets thrown at you.
Exactly. It's
Okay.
like building a knowledge base that can roll with the punches, adapt. But here's the thing, and this is where it gets interesting, the research. It says that having those backup solutions, it's most valuable when the rate of change is, well, moderate.
Hold on, really? Why wouldn't you want more options when things are changing super fast? That's when it seems like you'd need them the most.
Okay, so imagine this. If things change really slowly, like almost never, then one good solution, that might last you a long time, right? Is that trusty old hammer. If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Right.
But then on the other hand, if everything's changing constantly at lightning speed, well, anything you write down, it's going to be obsolete before you know it.
So it's like finding that middle ground where change is happening, enough to make those backup solutions worth having, but not so much that everything's out of date instantly.
You got it. It's all about understanding the pace of your industry, how fast things are changing, and then adjusting your strategy, how you handle knowledge, to match that.
This has been awesome, really got me thinking. Managing know-how, it's not just about hoarding information, it's so much more than that. It's about being strategic, understanding when and where to use what you've got, and always being ready to adapt.
Couldn't said it better myself.
Yeah.
Finding that balance between using the knowledge you have to get things done and also keeping that innovative spirit alive, that's the key.
It's about knowing that what got us here today might not be what gets us where we're going tomorrow, right? So as we wrap up here, think about this. How are you approaching knowledge? Are you stuck in your ways, or are you constantly searching for that next level up? Remember, the future belongs to those who aren't afraid to explore, to try new things, and to keep learning, always.